DraftSociety.com presents a Premier League Draft Fantasy Podcast. Welcome to the Key Pass Collective, your exclusive source for the information, analysis, and advice you need to dominate your fantasy leagues. Come on in. We've been expecting you.
What is going on, draft heads? Welcome back to the Key Pass Collective. I'm Joe Williams. I'll be your host here for this special podcast series that we're going to be doing on the various different positional breakdowns for your draft fantasy game. First, let's remind you the Key Pass Collective is the audio companion to the DraftSociety.com. We are a draft fantasy football podcast and site. And basically, we've got everything you need in order to dominate, absolutely dominate your leagues. During the season, whether it is weekly player projections, whether it is a fixture difficulty tracker, whether it is trade advice, articles on sleepers, waiver wire pickups to get you fully ready to win that matchup, win that game week, we've got that. But preseason, right now, we are focusing on draft prep. We are focusing on getting you ready to have the absolute best draft that you possibly can. So what does this mean? We are making rankings, team previews, cheat sheets, predicted 11s, very, very in-depth analysis articles, talking through the various strategic elements of this draft game. Fixture difficulty tracker for the early series of in-season fixtures, so you can kind of prep yourself depending on if you want to maybe attack the season to really get a good start and then maybe trade off some players. There's a lot of strategy that goes into these things. Anyway, we've got it all there for you. Plus player projections. Articles are dropping daily on our draft kit. It is the largest draft kit that this game, the Draft Premier League game, has ever seen. So if you'd like full access to that, $15. $60 will get you full access to the draft kit and the Inner Circle membership for the entire season. So all of our exclusive, everything that we make, whether it is like the aforementioned trade advice, ghost point tracker, set piece taker trackers, all of it, you get all of that for the entire season. If you don't want to do that, there are some free things on there as well. Check out the draft kit. We've got some top 75 rankings and positional rankings completely for free, as well as a few articles on there that are free as well. Plus, we're free. Anytime you want on Twitter, hit us up, send us a little message, add us on Twitter, start a conversation on there. We're happy to jump in there and give you some advice on drafts or whatever it is. Happy to get on there and just chat this game that we all know and love. Okay. Let's talk about this pod series. So this is going to be a series of 3 episodes. And what we're going to be doing is breaking down, not all of, but many of the 22-23 season draft assets by position. So for each episode in this series, we want to make sure that you've got a handle on the elite assets of that sort of positional breakdown. We want to make sure that you're understanding how to kind of properly rank those really tricky sort of mid-draft assets. You know, whether it's the 4th round, the 6th round, the 8th round, those can be really tricky to try to figure out what the exact value of those players is. So our goal is to kind of help talk you through some of those assets, those mid-round guys that can be, like I said, kind of tricky to really put a value on. So we'll talk through some of those. And then finally, once we get to the late rounds in the draft, it's a lot of times it's a dart throw. So we're going to give you our favorite dart throws, if you will, and then make a case for why maybe they're not just a dart throw, why there's some sneaky value late in the draft with some of these sleepers or potentially hidden gems that we'll hope to point out to you. Finally, before we sign off, we're going to end with some players that we think maybe are being overvalued or overrated or overhyped, if you will. Bottom line is we think the ADP or the average draft position is too high for that particular player. And then we'll go ahead and sign off. We're going to try to keep these ones relatively short. And yeah, the format is going to be the same for all three. So whether it's defenders, midfielders, or forwards, you're going to hear a lot of the same things when the podcast begins, and then we'll attack it the same way. But obviously, the content therein should be valuable, should be gold. So yeah, we'll do top tier, we'll do mid tier, and then we'll do late round drafts. A reminder as you are listening, if you can, to pull up our rankings on thedraftsociety.com so you can follow along and see where we've got different guys ranked. We can try to explain it as much as we can, but it's helpful to have a visual on that. So if you do want to head over to the website, check it out. Aesthetically, we think it's pleasing, but regardless, there's some really good information on there. So pull up our rankings if you can and follow along because we'll be trying to hit these pretty quick. So we just want to make sure that people do have the ability to sort of know where we're at, what we're talking about, and follow along as we go through these. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. This is your Defender Preview. All right, I am joined by Ryan, Robbie, and Toddy from the Draft Society. Hit up the Draft Society, read their articles, tell them what you think about them. They're amazing. They've been working hard all summer. But right now we're here to chat defenders. So we're not going to mull about. We're just going to jump right in. We're here to talk premium assets first. So premium defender assets, they are going to be Trent Alexander-Arnold, Cancelo, Robertson, Reece James, Ben Chilwell, and Virgil van Dijk. To kick it off with a short list, a nice short list. It'll get longer later. And these go from consensus rank 4 all the way up to consensus rank 27. So, Toddy, any players you want to key in on the elite or premium defenders?
Yes, I think I sound like a broken record after my tangent. See my tangent on the last pod with Chris from Overthinking Football, but my player in focus is Reece James, who will be creeping up my rankings.
Oh,
he was previously ranked 39th, which was an eye opener for many. But he, as of right now, in my preliminary ranks, he's 31st. With the signing of Koulibaly confirmed. My main argument for his low ranking is that he has been excellent in real life, performing in his centre-back spot in a few games last season and even the season before that. In their arguably two of the three most important games in the last 2 seasons. He started at centre-back, both against Real Madrid in the semi-final of the Champions League this year and the FA Cup final last season. He did that. I think Tuchel trusts him at centre-back, and I think he will start more than 5 games at centre-back in the upcoming season.
Interesting. Okay.
Where he is, for what it's worth, just for comparison, he has performed at centre-back close to, and you guys will know this because we've talked about this, one Connor Cody for Fantrax purposes.
Oh God. Oh
so
God.
that is
rarefied air.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So that is the prospect. I'm not saying he's going to be overwhelmingly at centre back, but I think he will be uncomfortably starting at centre back in a few games, and it will frustrate a lot of managers.
Okay. All right. Anyone else have a quick 2 cents on Reece James?
Yeah, real quick. I mean, I think even if he doesn't start a few games at center back, I mean, he hasn't started more than, I think, 25 games in the last 3 seasons. So injuries and rotation are still going to keep him down a little bit. But I'm curious how many more center backs they'd have to acquire for you to be completely off this James at RCB.
Well, Jules
like Koundé and
yeah.
Exactly. Koundé and like Ake, like two more, and you're just like, no.
if they get 2 more, I'll bump him up to beginning of round 2, full on right wing back.
Okay.
If they get 1 more, he'll still be 20 plus, but
Yeah.
he'll be around 25-ish, just like Robbie has him now.
Yeah. I'm still a little skittish about early round 2. It still just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, I think if they get Koundé in, then you've also got Trevor Chalobah that had played at right centre back as well. So I'm not sure there's too much risk of that. But yeah, we'll see, I guess.
We will indeed. Ryan, any of these premium assets you want to shout out?
I wanted to quickly talk about Cancelo because usually we only have Trent in the defender in round 1 discussion, but given his exploits last season, finally getting nailed on status and Pep's 11, and the fact that I think he finished 4th in total scoring, just behind Trent, we're starting to see that Cancelo's being taken around between like 6 to 9 usually in the first round. So just wanted to flag that and just see if other people are skittish about taking a non-Trent defender that early. I mean, based on the stats, he's very, very solid and very explosive and can put together some 20 to 30 point games. And given the defender exodus, you got to think that he's still going to be nailed on for at least 30 to 35 starts. I think he got 36 last season. So if he can keep up those performances, then he'll warrant that 6th spot. But I still think people will be a bit hesitant to take him that early. But I haven't had my real drafts yet, so I'm not sure. I don't know where he's gone in your guys' drafts.
Yeah, no, I've seen pretty similar, to be honest. I think he's quite a safe bet, isn't he? But the only issue, obviously, if you got Cucurella coming in, and obviously Walker has played a reasonable amount of right back, then do you see those starts going down a little bit? Because 36 is obviously a lot, especially for someone in a Pep team.
Yeah, but I mean, they still had Zinchenko and Walker last season as well. So I don't know if
you've got to see Cucurella as a step up, though, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I guess that is the only question mark. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes. The other defender I wanted to mention is Chilwell, who's an interesting case because obviously we had that like 7 game stretch to go by last season,
just lit it up,
where he was just a house on fire. That was bookended by him being completely out of sorts mentally from the Euros and not starting the first several games, and Alonso supplanting him. That crazy explosion, and then a horrific injury. So we know that he's got it in his locker to be a top 5 defender. Will that injury prevent him from starting strong, or will it be re-aggravated? Obviously, if he was fully healthy coming into this season and that injury hadn't happened last season, I could see him in the same stratosphere as Reece James and maybe Cancelo. But given all of that uncertainty, I'd feel pretty good about taking him in like round 3.
Oh, I'd love him in round 3,
like early round 3. So. And from what we've the little that we've seen about from preseason, it seems like he has lacked fitness and been a little off the pace, which is completely understandable given the injury. But how long is it going to take him to really get up to speed, especially since they haven't sold Alonso or Emerson? So I'm curious how he's going to start.
Anyone else with 2 cents on those 2 players, Cancelo or Chilwell? All good?
I think I agree with Ryan. I think you cannot, or I'm definitely not gonna expect reasonably more starts from Cucurella than Zinchenko got. So I'm pretty certain of 32 plus starts from Cancelo, which make him a no-brainer.
Oh yeah.
It's a top 8 pick.
The only place in the draft for me where I start to question, like where I start to really kind of like lean Cancelo over the other options available is after Diaz and Haaland are gone. And that's when I'm looking at Maddison, Cancelo, etc., like that part of the draft. And that's for me. I don't know how you guys value that particular portion.
I think Cancelo's the least risky pick in a lot of ways, but I think there are others that have higher ceilings. Like I think Maddison has a higher ceiling, but I mean Cancelo scored 14 points per 90 the last 2 seasons, so I don't think he's necessarily improving on that. Whereas Maddison, I think we could see get more than that.
Oh, that's fair, and he's probably pushing for a move at this point as well.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't mean this summer, hopefully, but
sure.
Yeah, I agree with Robbie. I think even considering Diaz and Haaland, I think Cancelo is a much safer pick than those two.
Okay. Well, you make me feel better about picking 8th then. All right, Robbie, premium defensive assets that you wanted to shout out?
Yeah, so I wanted to highlight Robertson, who I actually have one place ahead of Cancelo.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And that won't change in my next rank. So, but yeah, the reason I'm highlighting him is just purely for his second half of the season form, where he was getting up to about 16 points per start, and that partly was him sort of recovering after having the injury, coming off the back of the Euros and no pre-season. He sort of got into his stride then, and also Luis Diaz coming into the squad, and I think that really sort of invigorated him, and he's really put up some big performances. And I think actually the presence of Tsimikas helped in terms of he could take a bit of the load off, and he obviously didn't get as many starts, but I think with him not in the World Cup this year, and I think that sort of I see that form picking up, if you will, or at least maintaining. And if he can get something like the 15.9 points per start, I got a note down here for the second half of the season, then that's he's well worthy of that spot, considering how many starts he's going to get.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else?
So the other one was just a big Verge. He's obviously Draft Lads projections just dropped, and he's ranked in there as 13th, which might surprise some people. But that is literally based on his last year's number of starts and his points per start. So I sort of feel like coming off the back of the the big injury he had last season, he sort of was a little bit sluggish, especially at the start, and his ghosts and his goals and assist output was a little bit down. So I think even if he just gets one extra goal and has a bit of a bump, you could see him being a top 10 asset again, quite comfortably. And I think people are sleeping on him a little bit. I mean we've got him at 27 in our ranks, but I've seen him go in the 4th round in mocks. So if he starts to drop to the end of the 3rd, start of the 4th, I think you'd be laughing.
And DraftLad has him at 21.
Yeah, exactly.
Highest on him.
Yeah, no surprise there.
Yeah, right.
Based on his war rankings, yeah.
All right, gents. Any other thoughts quickly on the premium assets before we move on to mid-round defensive assets?
Okay, just to reiterate that Van Dijk push by Robbie, he's actually projected to, or based on war, he's like a 1st round pick. So if you can get him in the 3rd or 4th, then could be a steal of the draft.
I find that hard to believe that he's that high up in WAR, given that his ghosts are so low, and that he basically thrives off of clean sheets, and that obviously they get a lot of them. But I don't know. He must just be one of those players that just racks up a bunch of points and goes a bit under the radar. But I don't remember him having any like monster games.
Yeah, I remember we discussed this before, didn't we? It was only like, was it 8 games where he scored over 15 points? But
Yeah,
he had
it's
so
just
many
like
in
solid, like 11 to 12, like almost every week because of the cleanies, you know.
Exactly that. I mean, he did obviously, if Liverpool don't get a clean sheet, then he had a bit of a down year in terms of, his floor might be a little bit lower. But yeah, he just, just kept racking out the points and with all the clean sheets Liverpool are getting. So, and I mean, I don't see that necessarily, slowing down, if you will.
He has a quality start metric of 74%.
There you go. Yeah.
74%. So he's getting you at least that's Mo Salah has 73. So that's the baseline.
But he's like the equivalent of the John McGinn of defenders. He'll get you 10 every week. But like, do you want to risk it on somebody that'll drop like Reece James? That'll drop like 20 or 30.
Yeah, but this is the point, isn't it? At what point in the draft are you taking the whole risk and reward thing? There's a lot more risk with Reece James, isn't there? So,
well, he and Ben Chilwell are right next to each other in ADP. Ben Chilwell slightly ahead, right around 27, 28.
Yeah, that's the good comparison. Like Ben Chilwell will get you 5 Q90 starts, which means that those starts will be in the 90th percentile for defenders, but he won't get you many Q50 or Q75 starts. Whereas Van Dijk will essentially get you 2 at least Q50 starts in 3 games. More than that, 3 in 4 games.
I mean, I like them both, but
actually, I'll just take them both.
Yeah.
I think the funny thing is that at that point in the draft, you haven't really, you can't really decide whether you want a safer pick or a sort of more upside pick. It's sort of like, I'm just, because you've only had one pick basically before.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
So it's a bit of a difficult balance. I think it's just up to the manager what they prefer, really.
Kind of depends on how you're going to approach the draft for the rest of it. Are you gonna go more upside plays? In which case, maybe you want a VVD to sort of like batten down the hatches.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to mid tiers. So this is from consensus rank 36 all the way down to 93. We start with Luca Dean. We end with Wesley Fofana. Now, I'm not going to read them all out because there's many of them, but also users can go and listeners can go and check out our ranks, and you can follow right along with us. So this is a kind of a wide swath, which is exactly why we want to key in on some of these guys, because these guys can be a little bit hard to nail down in terms of their value as we're under the pressure of the clock during the draft. So let's talk through some of these guys. Ryan, how about you take a stab at these mid-tier players first?
Sure. I was intrigued by Luca Dean. He's similar to Chile in the fact that he had some really interesting ups and downs last season. Started out at Everton, obviously, with a manager that didn't really fancy him. To say the least, they fell out. He went to Villa in January. You were expecting the Dean of old, but you only saw him a few times that second half of the season. So he's in a really weird spot going into this draft. So I'm really intrigued to see where he goes. He's been mostly going, I think, in the 4th round in a lot of the mocks that I've seen. Which seems about right, but he has such a great ceiling. But it really depends on whether or not he gets put on a bit more set pieces, and if Villa can shore up the defense. Love the signing of Diego Carlos. So if they can pair him with Mings, and Mings gets his act together. With big if Dini on the left and Cash on the right, and Emi Martinez, of course, we know it can be a top shelf goalkeeper. I think they keep more cleanies, and Dini, we were talking about explosiveness. He has that explosiveness and the ability to get 2 assists in a game and drop 20 to 30. We've seen that at Everton and a few times in the latter half of the last season. So I think he is a high upside play in the fourth round. So I'm keeping an eye on him. And just real quickly on Ryan Aït-Nouri.
Your boy.
Yeah, my boy indeed. Doesn't have any real competition on the left other than Johnny, but he'll be predisposed on the right, covering for Semedo at least the beginning of the season. And Aït-Nouri takes some sets, has a great left foot. I think Wolves will be a bit more solid this season, but it will be interesting to see if they switch from a back five to a back four, and how that affects the fullbacks. Like Aït-Nouri, does he still get forward as much as he did as a wing back? How does that really play out? So he's somebody I'm certainly thinking about in around like the eighth.
I find it interesting real quick on
uncertainty.
Him. Oh, sorry. I find it interesting on him too, quick, that we have him at 76 and his ADP right now is 93.
Oh, well.
So right. So there's some value to be had there if listeners agree with you.
Yeah, in the mocks I've seen, he hasn't slipped much further than 7 or 8. But yeah, after that, he's very good value. And then the last one I mentioned is Tierney, because he's in a really difficult spot given the fact that he's injury prone and the arrival of Zinchenko. So he'll drop quite a bit. Where he becomes worth the punt, I guess, is up to the draft manager's risk reward proposition. But if he starts slipping past 11 or so, he might be worth a punt, because I still think if he's healthy, he probably starts over Zinchenko on the left. And as we all know, Arsenal has a pretty good schedule to start out with, so he could be value late.
Oh, wow. So it sounds like once we update our ranks, he's going to fall out of this list of mid-tier players for you.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, wow. Okay, because we have him at 81, and you said you'd be comfortable with him in round 11?
Yeah.
Oof.
I mean, given the fact that he's nursing a knock right now, apparently, and Zinchenko is coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, that has to drop him down a few pegs.
Okay. All right. Any thoughts on any of those three, gents?
I do think that Zinchenko will feature sometime in a midfield position. So as much as I'm afraid of Tierney as an injury prone player, I still think he has extremely high upside. So I wouldn't like. I get the anxiousness, and I my rankings will reflect that as well, but I don't think it's a bad pick in the mid to late rounds. Like, I would rather him than Luke Shaw.
Yeah,
obviously.
I agree there. That might be a handcuff worth trying for in your draft, is him and Zinchenko. So I think both will produce when they're in there.
Yep, it's not a bad shout, I think.
Yeah, I don't know how Zinchenko will score as a midfielder, but he might be that Kouyaté of this season, a defender playing as midfielder.
Right, exactly.
So you get the cleanies plus some.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Love that out of position for sure. Okay, cool. Robbie, how about mid-tier for you? Any guys you want to key in on?
Yeah, so one of the guys was Joel Matip, who's my boy from last season. Did the business for me, but into the coming season, there's a bit more of a question mark surrounding him. We've even also had Calvin Ramsey come in sort of to become the backup right back,
right
behind Trent, which now means Gomez, who is fit, as well as Konate, who's the main competition there. sort of muddies the waters a little bit in terms of the competition for that place. I still think he starts the season there, and with the hectic schedule with Europe, with European games coming, which is basically, 2 games every week. I think we'll probably see that timeshare again once we get to there with Matip in the league and Konate in the cup. But actually, after that, after the World Cup, I'm really not sure what happens. I think Konate really had a breakout season and impressed a lot, especially against the bigger clubs and in the Champions League run. So it's one where he was in the top 20 overall fantasy points. And I mean, you've got to, and now he's down at 47 in our ranks. So I think that reflects where the risks you think you might be taking for him. But so just want to highlight that.
And he's one who's actually, his ADP, average draft position, is higher, or I guess lower. He's being taken earlier than is actually reflected in our ranks. He's being taken an average of 45.5.
Okay, so it's not too much difference.
No, it's pretty close.
I think people are sort of factoring all of those risks in, basically, and that's what's happening with him. So, so if you're bullish on him starting the same as last season, then take him a tad earlier. But I think in terms of he's obviously had this bad injury record, and one full season isn't necessarily going to mean that he's doesn't get injured again. So lots and lots of risks, basically.
So Robbie, do you think it's fair to say that if you are and I'm in the middle of writing an article on this very subject for our draft kit, so if you are optimizing your draft or your squad to have early season success in a league where you expect a lot of trades happening, is he someone to expressly target?
Yeah, that's an interesting point, and Liverpool do actually have a very good run in the first 6 games as well. So I mean, I guess the risk there is that with the first 5 game weeks, there's no Europe, is there? So if Konate is the number one, boom, he's just lost all value.
Right.
So,
so it's a big risk.
Yeah. I wouldn't reach too far for him. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But it's an interesting argument.
Okay.
Where would you take him if he falls to you? Round 4?
In terms of my ranks, I've got him at 49, so that's basically the end of round 4, start round 5. Sort of region. I think, especially, it depends on who you draft in the first 3 rounds, but I think by that point, if you've only got one forward or something like that, and just seeing a sort of a risky defender, even no matter how good he was last season, sort of doesn't really do it for me, I don't think. But it's a difficult one. I think end of round 4 is about the earliest I'd go.
Okay, sounds great.
So the other guy I had highlighted was Cucurella. So obviously we just touched on him earlier, but I think I've bumped him up nearly 20 places in my ranks after the news of Zinchenko going to Arsenal, and obviously Cucurella likely to be going to City.
Wow.
So I mean, just in terms of numbers, he got 8.5 points per start and started 35 games. So he was a sort of a stalwart for Brighton, really. Obviously, at City, he's going to start less games. That's obvious, I think, especially with the transfer having not gone through already. And you sort of feel the extra clean sheets, probably a bit more production in terms of goals and assists. I mean, he put in 42 key passes, and we all know Brighton players can't hit the back of the goal at all. So I would hope that his production in that sense would go up. So sort of bump him up to, I don't know, 10 points per start or something, and take his starts down to 25 to 28 or something like that. But it's he becomes a more interesting prospect, and you're looking at, like say, a bit like Matip, that sort of position in the draft now.
I'm worried about. Kind of worried about the opposite. I think people will probably overreact to the City news, and the madness will ensue when people will start like trying to pick him up in like the third round. Which I'm happy to let you deal with that. But
totally,
I'm curious if when we actually get to draft day, if there actually will be some value to be had there, or if people will just overreach for him. So that's something I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
All right. I'm so sad. After writing all of my Brighton pieces, I'm just so sad. That's fine. City gets anything and everything they want. All right, Toddy, tell us about your mid-round guys.
Okay, so I have two sort of controversial ones, and one I'll just mention briefly is Ruben Dias. I am very much against drafting City centre backs, as they don't usually have a lot of work to do, and they get a surprising amount of missed clean sheets where they score a buttload of points, but then concede a stupid goal.
Yep.
But they do have a sort of fluctuation in value for their centre backs. So I do think Ruben Dias is the number one guy there. So there's no question on playing time for him. And if you think, or if any of your if any of our listeners think that City will go back to, I think it was 3 years ago when they racked up clean sheets like it was nobody's business, then he will be a steal at like where we have him around 80 in our draft ranks. But other than that, I am just like, their upside is literally the clean sheets, and they are much less reliable in those metrics than other top teams would be. So I think that's a bit high on him. Although I have him at around 80 something there as well. So
have you looked at his ADP?
I haven't looked at his ADP. Do you have it?
64.
Okay, yeah.
That's
So
madness,
so guys who draft loosely based on our rankings will not get Ruben Dias, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And the other player I wanted to mention just makes it to the mid-tier defenders, and is Wesley Fofana, who you can read my ode to in the Leicester Sleepers article. I think to go and look at him, you have to just fully disregard last season and look at the season before, which was his debut season, and he performed as a defender too in his debut season. And if you draft him or value him based on that, I have him at around 80. All the other cats have him around 100. So I'm a good 20-ish points ahead of you, or 20-ish ranks ahead of you for him. But I do believe that he will have a bounce back here.
Draft Lad likes him.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I'm not too far away.
Yeah. No, I like the shout. Honestly, I can't argue with it. I'd be nervous to take him that early, I think, for me.
What's his ADP?
I haven't looked. Let me see.
Has to be around 120, I would think.
Yeah, I think I've been seeing him go like 12 or 13, I want to say.
Nice, Toddy. 123.
Yep.
So there you go.
I think he's definitely, I think you can safely pick him up around round 10 without the threat of somebody else looking at him if you are not in a like high powered Twitter league. In a home league, I think you should go for him in like round 12, 11.
Oh yeah,
and he will be amazing value there.
love that. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Any other thoughts, quickly, guys, on mid-tier guys, mid-draft players, defenders? You good?
Good.
All right, let's move. So let's talk late round sleepers, hidden gems, all these guys at the end of the draft. We, of course, ranked up to 150. So we're talking about players from Ibrahim Konate at 93 for us, all the way down to Johnny, who is at 132. Believe it or not, we didn't have any defenders after that. So that basically is the extent of it. So let's talk about these kind of late rounders. A lot of them will fall into the 15th, 16th rounds. Some of them will go undrafted. So it's a curious situation here. Robbie, why don't you kick this one off for us?
Yeah. So to move on or keep on the Matip theme, I'll highlight Konate. He didn't actually put up great numbers last season in his 11 starts. I think it was only about seven points per start, something like that. But obviously, it's a small sample size, and he did tend to, like in the Champions League matches, have some of the tougher games. But I think it's interesting where we think he'll go, because I think at the moment he's 93 in our ranks, and I've seen him going a lot lower than that.
122 ADP.
Yeah, that feels a bit more, like the risk of him not actually being the starter becomes more interesting. And obviously, if you do take Matip earlier, then he's a good option as a handcuff for the early part of the season, if that's your thing.
When you're holding him all season?
I wouldn't hold him all season. Just the one that, in terms of the trend of their starts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Until it becomes clear. Okay, got you.
Yeah.
How jumpy would you be for Konate if you had picked up Matip in like round 5?
I think maybe more like our ranks, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so 93 we have him at. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the
you're
high.
terrified to lose out on him.
Ironically, 93 is the highest that any of us have him ranked.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like if you've picked up Matip, your finger will be very sweaty in like rounds starting round 8, and you'll be calculating, looking at other teams' rosters, whether anyone needs a punty defender or whatever, and I think you won't be able to hold your nerve until like round 10 or round 9. So
then I'd be a dick and pick him up and then immediately
exactly.
trade.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, listen to that. I love that strategy. Absolutely.
Yeah, picking up other people's cuffs and trying to trade them back.
Yep.
Yeah.
Next little shithousery.
Beautiful. All right. Any others for you, Robbie?
So I wanted to highlight the West Ham fullbacks, Cresswell and Kufal. So I think Cresswell had a bit of a disappointing season.
They were shit, Robbie.
He was absolute a shell
They were
of
dog
himself.
shit.
Yeah. But actually, what I'd done in the article I did for the West Ham sleepers anyway, I just looked at the season before last, where he had actually what was deemed quite a good season. He had about nearly 9 points per start. But actually, if we sort of look at before he had that weird back injury, and generally before West Ham's form fell off a cliff, he was actually averaging 9.2 points per start up to game week 27. So, he wasn't actually far off what he was, and that was with losing out on sets to Bowen, or as many sets, if you will. So obviously after that, he had about 3.3 points per start. I got written down here, which is just like absolute trash, isn't it? But I feel like this season West Ham's defense is going to improve. So I think in terms of clean sheets that will go up. You don't know about in terms of the output for from sets and that, in terms of assists and key passes and that. But I feel with what was his name, Naif Eguard, I don't know how to pronounce that one.
Yeah.
With Zuma in there, and more settled back four, then I think that should. And I think Moyes, I think it was a bit a bit wild, his team last year, which it really isn't in his style. So I think I think we'll see a bit of an improvement there. So at his ADP, just is not really much of a risk, to be honest. We've got him at 117. I'd imagine his ADP might be lower, Joe.
Good question. Let's see.
Sorry.
Joe's the ADP guy.
No, 102.8. I think he's living off that name value. In fact, he's one ahead of Tierney, and definitely ahead of other defenders I'm taking way before him. One of those including Diego Dalot.
Yeah. I haven't seen him go that high in any of the mocks. But Dalot will go much earlier than that now. But yeah, anyway, it was just a highlight of, it's one of these players that it looks like they've dropped, but actually they might just be the same player they were. And he was getting drafted at like 67, I think, last season, based on his previous that was his ADP. So
right,
yeah, just maybe you get a bit of value there, but like you say, it's most people won't be looking at him thinking he'll be a good prospect next season. Kufal, and the other one I wanted to highlight was Kufal. I think there's a risk that he loses his spot to Ben Johnson. So I'm just avoiding him completely. He had spells, and he obviously had the injury in that, but he had spells in pretty bad form. So yeah, I wouldn't touch him personally.
Oh wow. Okay.
I kind of like Soufal. His value, at least this season. I think he was taken. I remember kind of last draft he was taken around like round 6, just because he had a great season the campaign before last. I think because of the complete and utter lack of clean sheets or a viable defense is weighing down all the West Ham defensive assets. But he's actually one of them that I wouldn't mind taking a punt on later in the draft, just because he's proven that he has a bit of attacking verve, and if they actually do shore up the defense, he'll certainly benefit. So where I've seen him go in like the 11th, he starts to become very interesting there for me. I don't see Ben Johnson taking over that spot. Yeah, that's crazy. So he's somebody I'm keeping an eye on.
Yeah. Well, we've got him at 101, and I guess if his ADP is 125, that's when he starts to get interesting, right?
Yeah. He's one behind Kyle Walker in ADP. So which would you rather have?
Yeah. Don't think we need to dignify that with an answer, do we?
Still ahead of Harry Maguire. Question, right? Still ahead of Harry Maguire. All right. Toddy, how about your late round flyers?
I'll highlight 2 entire defenses. One is, and it's a great segue. One is the United defense, and I think everyone is sleeping on the United defense. I'm not gonna say that they're gonna challenge for top 4 or anything like that, but last season was horrendous, and I think to have that as your base valuation for United defenders, it will be wrong for the season. I think Maguire, Dalot, Lisandro Martinez, and to some extent the left back, who remains to be decided, will serve up value during the season. I'm not gonna go out on a limb and say this will be at the beginning of the season, but I think looking at these players, like I did a mock and I drafted Maguire in the 15th or something like that, and that's just crazy value. I think like he has the potential of a defender 1, and picking up a potent, like it was essentially similar kind of punt as picking up Joel Matip last season in the 15th round. And the other defense I wanted to highlight is the Leicester defense, and we have 3 guys in the lowest tier for our discussions, and it's James Justin who is the highest, and Ricky Pereira and Timothy Castagne. I think Leicester will bounce back in a big way. They will. They have no Europe to consider, and I think they will push for top 6 this season, and they will improve their defense. And let's not forget that Ricardo Pereira was a top 5 defender 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, but how many spots
2
are there?
very
in the
long
defense?
seasons ago.
That is very long, and
I'm done with him.
and yeah, I understand that I have just highlighted 3 fullbacks
Right.
in a for a team that usually only use 2, and that is the reason why they are why they have an ADP of above 100 and why they have a ranking of above 100. The safest bet out of these lot would be James Justin for me. Obviously, I'm not going to draft 3 of these guys or 2 of these guys, but I will have a look at James Justin for in around round 10. We have him ranked lower than 100 for ADP, so I think around 10, 11-ish, he will be good value.
Okay, I like it. Anybody have thoughts on either of those 2 entire team defenses? I'm just messing with you, Toddy. All right, Ryan, let's hear your late round sleepers.
I really like, not really like, that's a strong word. I'm intrigued by John Stones, just based off of the fact that he's plummeted so far in the ADP. I mean, he had points per start of around a dozen last season, so clearly can do the biz, but injuries prevented him from being nailed on in the 11. I understand that Laporte obviously performed pretty well and was starting a lot more than Stones last season, but I think coming back from that knock with full preseason, I think he has a decent chance of taking back his starting CB role, in which case he should be valued around where Diaz is, and if you can get that value, but 4 to 5 rounds later, then that's certainly a great punt around like round 13, I think. What's his ADP?
Which one? Sorry.
John Stones.
Probably too high for me. Let's see. 149. Actually, that's
what I'm saying. That's
great.
It's crazy low.
Wow. I'm very surprised by that.
Yeah, so
yeah, I mean he's
somebody,
he's just behind Dele Alli. So should give you an idea.
Do the math there.
Right. Okay, I like it.
Yeah, so if you're ranking him at 107 and his ADP is at 149, you can do the math there.
All right.
Somebody else I'm looking at, Dan Byrne, which is funny because I thought he would be overvalued this season, given the fact that after his move to Newcastle, he was great. But a lot of people have bought into this notion that he'll either share time or be supplanted by Schär. Now that Sven Botman is coming in, and I don't think I buy that. And so I'm happy to see him slip as far as he has. So he's certainly somebody I'm looking to potentially get some value from.
Oh, the upside's there for sure.
Yeah, and yeah, it'll solely depend on if he gets the starts. If he does, presumably their defense is going to be even better, and they'll go from strength to strength this season. So yeah, if he falls, I'm happy to pounce and take the risk. And then another defender I'll quickly mention at this late stage is Nico Williams. As we know, left Liverpool for 4 years to take over from Spence. Very active attacking fullback. Not a big fan of the early schedules of the promoted teams, but might be worth taking a punt on late on and just kind of weathering this storm. If not, I'm fine passing on him too. And as we've talked about ad nauseum, kind of waiting for game week 5 or so to pick up some of these fallen soldiers. So yeah, he's somebody I'm intrigued by.
All right. Any other thoughts on late round flyers or anyone who's been mentioned before we move right along?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty high on the United and Leicester defenders as well in terms of them being undervalued. Actually, I took Justin and Maguire back to back at about 115, something like that.
Okay.
Sorry, 110, 111 in my home league draft. So, yeah, it's they sort of feel at that point in the draft like the reward is much higher than the risk, and they feel that bit undervalued.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That makes sense. Okay. Those are good, boys. I like those. I like those a lot. I think especially listeners who have home leagues and aren't in like any of the uber competitive community leagues are going to be able to cash in on some of these guys late for sure. So I love that. Let's move on, and we're just going to go ahead and use the overvalued, overhyped section as kind of your sign off. So give us one player that you are staying away from at his current average draft position, and go ahead and give us a quick sign off for the listeners. Toddy, we're coming back to you first.
Mine is Kieran Trippier. I think he's drafted. I think he's drafted very early. His current ADP
37
is 37. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think he's living. I think he's going to be good. Like I think he's going to be solid. But he is living off that incredible run of scoring free kicks and just playing out of his mind. Like Luka Dean is at 46, and I'd much rather Luka Dean.
Yeah, I could see that.
Both will sit out due to tummy aches, but who's going to have better gastrointestinal fortitude this season?
Guts.
Guts.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, I like it. Thanks, Toddy. Ryan, how about your overvalued, overhyped, do not draft player?
Pains me to say, but one James Tarkowski, I think the name recognition will have him drafted way before he should be. Everton's a mess. I don't see them shoring up the defense, and I don't know enough about Tarkowski and in a defense like Everton to know that he's going to give you those guaranteed points that he was always going to at Burnley. And so I'm not willing to take that risk with such a high pick, because I've seen him mostly go in I think the 5th round or so, and that's way too high for me. So he needs to fall at least 2 more rounds. I think mid 6, early 7. He starts to become value, but 5th round I just think there's better targets there.
Okay, yeah, a lot of question marks there, especially with the new team. That's a good shout. Okay, Robbie, how about your overvalued, overhyped player?
Yeah, so one that I've seen with a pretty insane ADP, I think at the time when I checked it was 83, was Arsenal's Gabriel Magalhaes, who, I mean, that guy, he just doesn't put up good points. I have no idea why. I mean, I think he got a few goals, didn't he?
Scored more goals than Sancho.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, if you're gonna have to trot him out every single game to catch them, aren't you? Which isn't what you want. I'll tell you that. But yeah, I think his ghost points are about 5 ghost points per start or something like that. And Arsenal didn't keep enough clean sheets for it to be for him, to warrant maybe even drafting him, let alone taking him in the the first half of the draft. So yeah, I just thought I'd highlight that. There's a few players like that who just feel like they have no value whatsoever, but their ADPs are super high. So
you know what I think is the reason behind his ADP. I think a lot of lay people are thinking that he's Gabriel Martinelli. There's no other reason for it. I cannot think of any other rationale behind him being that high, just randomly. Because then Ben White would be right around there too,
Interesting.
Yeah. But I think people see the goals, don't they? And I guess if you're coming from FPL, then it's just goals and clean sheets. So
maybe. Yeah.
Maybe
that's it.
I don't know. But obviously on Fantrax, it's not all. It's not everyone playing default scoring, and there's a lot of people playing other scoring methods. So maybe that can
point. Maybe a combo that
can skew it a bit. But yeah.
All right, I like it.
Yeah, Lisandro Martinez is at 87, which will, I think, adjust because he's just been added to the system. But I think that's way too high as well.
Yeah,
for sure.
He didn't put up good numbers in terms of the Ajax performances in the Champions League that Draft Lads put together on his spreadsheet. So I think it was about like 6 or 7 points per star or something like that. So yeah, I mean, I'd be pretty wary of drafting him, to be honest.
And that will wrap it up for this particular episode. Thank you for tuning in to this positional discussion series. We really do appreciate it. I say it all the time. Community, you're the reason we do this. You were the reason why we started the site. You're it. So we love you. Thank you so much for supporting us, for tuning into the podcast, reading the articles, engaging us on Twitter, just all the things. You're the best. So if you have any questions, as we always say, start a dialogue, start a conversation. Add us. We will retweet you if you have questions about how your draft went. You want us to rate your draft. You want the community to rate your draft, because we're not the only ones who know things here. Let's be honest. Go ahead and tag us. We will gladly retweet that. If you want to take part in a mock draft, get at us. We will set you up with somebody who can, probably Chris, let's be honest, it's always Chris who's doing mock drafts. Anyway, we'll set you up with somebody who can help you with mock drafts. If you have trade advice, if you need player valuation assistance, or you just have a player you don't quite understand why we're ranking a certain way or why the community feels a certain way about a certain player, let us know. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's get it out there, because I love to have my mind changed too. There can be sometimes groupthink that goes on in certain aspects of the draft community. So let's make sure we're not, challenging each other in a mean-spirited way, but challenging each other in a way that really just makes it so that we're all fleshing out our opinions to the greatest degree, to where we actually have data, or we actually have valid predictions to back up the things that we're saying. So we're all going into the drafts as best we can. And then those lonely suckers that are not on Twitter joining this community that is so supportive and wonderful, they obviously are going to be the ones who lose out and just get absolutely dominated in their drafts. So anyway, hit us up on Twitter if you have any questions. Otherwise, again, thank you for listening. Head over to thedraftsociety.com. You'll see the draft kit there and everything we've got to offer. Again, thank you for your support, community. Again, we love you. Cheers.